Hey, 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 everybody. Let's make sure we're all, yep, we are. Hi, welcome to Critical Q&A number 511 in this late August of 2025. You can see this might be the last day, the last time that I actually brust out the Hawaiian shirts where the weather is starting to cool, but I just love these shirts so much. And I thought that this show is the show where I get to sort of let my hair down a little bit and be chill and just hang with you guys. And that's all we're doing here. And I'm not trying to necessarily be super impressive or, interesting. Oh yes, and sorry, just decided to randomly check my messages when they were coming in. And anyway, yeah, so summer finally arrived. That's right. No, summer is kind of coming to a close here. I think we could get another heat wave, and if we do, I'm ready for it. I've got my shorts and balmy Hawaiian wear ready to rock. And I just love wearing these clothes because they are so casual and so comfortable. And so I'm going to tell you guys all about it. Anyway, thanks for coming about and joining me here today on this wonderful Sunday. I'm very, very happy to have you guys here. Let's get the Q&A box set up before we do anything else. Start Q&A. Please put your questions here. Start that Q&A. Good. So we've got that box now up. You can always see me sliding it across the displays to get into my little display here. And let's put that there. And oh, now that's interesting. Why are you giving me such a little bit of a hard time on this display today? Well, we're just going to have to see if that works and hope that that's not going to be a problem. It's acting a little different today than it usually acts. So I usually have my when that happens. But anyway, let's switch over to the host and chat screen here so we get your points up on the screen. Oh, there we go. I see. We froze for a second. Okay, good. There we go. All right. Come back over here for a second. Just handling a little technical point. There we go. Okay, good. Great. Okay, good. Keep your questions coming in. And, getting a little bit of a frozen. Yeah, hiccuping. Yeah, it's, I don't know what to say. It's not my software. It seems to be the internet connections or something. Unless there's some updates that are happening, with the software that are creating bugs that are new, nothing's really changing on my end. I'm not fiddling with the buttons or doing weird things. So, but internet bandwidth is a scary random thing you find when you try to do like Zoom chats with people at different times of the day, especially international ones, which I do often because of the, either because I'm doing interviews or because I'm doing consultations with people. And it is crazy, crazy, crazy how we are in 2025 and we still have internet bandwidth issues because somebody in the house is using their phone while you're trying to do a chat, or watch a TV show on Netflix while you're over here doing something, or worse, there is nobody else in the house and it's just you in a Zoom call or you on doing a live, and somebody else in the neighborhood is using a lot of bandwidth. This is a ridiculous set of problems to be having in 2025. And it's amazing to me how incompetent and inefficient and uncaring, going to get a little rant from me here, our internet service provider companies are about these technical issues, because this is pretty settled science. We pretty much understand how all this stuff works, unless, of course, there's something I don't know about the internet, industry out there and bandwidth and stuff. But it is, ugh. And just so you guys know, I am hardwired into the line here on this computer doing this work. Everything I've set up here, I've set up so that it is best possible performance, when I go live, because it matters to me. And so it really, really bugs me. But hasn't it been the case? Haven't you noticed over the last many years how tech is making things harder, not easier? How it's making it harder for us to live our lives and do the things we need to do, whether we're checking our messages or getting notifications of things or trying to run an app that just does a thing. Everybody is trying to make their apps do everything now. Zoom was introduced. Somebody pointed this out to me the other day, that Zoom originally was just Zoom. It was just calls online. That was it. It was just a telecall, right? And now it's trying to get into your calendar and your scheduling and your contacts and your this and your that and documents, and it's trying to be everything for you. And so is Google, and so is Microsoft Office, and so is, the Apple stuff. And all these guys are trying to totally take over, all of your software needs, rather than focusing hard in on one software and do it really, really well. Instead, they sputter all over all kinds of different kinds of software and do it all shitty. And this is, I've said before, and I will say again, that it is an effort. There's a philosophical backbone to this, which is a destructive philosophy. And it is the philosophy of expansion, endless amounts of expansion and growth. It's the growth mindset philosophy, where if you're not growing, you're shrinking because you can't stay the same, which is bullshit. But it's this idea that people have. Hubbard in Scientology pushed this relentlessly. So did Werner Erhard in Est, landmark form. Right? Same principle, right? If you're not growing, you're somehow, doing worse because you're shrinking, as though shrinking is always a horrible, horrible thing. People like Hubbard and Werner Erhard cannot conceive of just having a steady Eddie regular life, right? And neither can most of the CEOs and business folks out in America these days. And so it's just growth, no matter what. And so that challenges and makes impossible the idea of growing a product and then stabilizing it and keeping it solid and workable, and this just works. No, it has to be improved. It has to be better because next year there has to be more growth, see? So we have to bring more people on board. And we have to expand the demographic, and so that we have to expand the number of options available, and so we have to expand this tech, and it's constantly therefore unstable, because when you introduce new changes of magnitude into tech, it destabilizes what you've already created, rather than focusing on stabilizing what's already there, right? So oh, we got a hot one in the questions coming in today. This is awesome. Great. Okay. We'll get to those, but I have a few things to go over first. Okay, so rant over on the tech, and hopefully, hopefully things are fine. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I know, bud. I know yeah, it would be better if we had fiber and a bunch of things. And these are the things that are beyond our control to some degree, right? Like, I don't know what Comcast is doing in my neighborhood area, when it comes to the bandwidth issues and stuff. And of course, I'm never going to get somebody on the line who's going to be able to explain it to me from Comcast, because they don't have customer service like that, and they don't respond. That's the other half of this problem, is that customer service and the entire concept of that is, a bit of a let's throw that to the wolves and let's put that to the lowest common denominator of service. Call it customer service. You know, oh no, we care. We care. Okay. All right. Anyway, enough about that ranting. Let's move on. We have, first off, let's go to our Benson cam and get that up on the screen there. This was Benson. He is totally chilling here. You are seeing a very lazy, shagged out Benson. He is totally chilling. Mel took him out for a walk and he had his morning activities. And so this is him late morning. Sometimes you'll see me doing a video with him where he is early morning and he's super, super pumped and super, super energetic and super, super excited about stuff. And then late morning, early afternoon, he goes into chill mode because he just, uses up all of his energy in the morning. And he's leaning up against something Mel got this week. He got these little stairs. This little stair thing that goes up to the bed. So now instead, because he wants to get up on the bed all the time, and so now instead of, come back to us here, we have to pick him up all the time to pull him up on the bed, right? He comes up and he's like, oh, I want to come up. And now we got the little stairs and we taught him how to use it so he can go up and down on the bed. And it's all very, very cute. All right. Yeah, he definitely knows how to chill. Good. So let us go over, before we forget, as I am wont to do, our critical thinking cards. These are produced by yourlogicalfallacyis.com. You can, or these are from the makers of that, schoolofthought.org. They don't pay me for this at all. They should, but they don't. And and I love promoting these critical thinking cards. So let's go ahead and go over one real fast. Oh, we did this one the other day, and I totally mispronounced it because I'm horrible that way. That one, too. We just did these a couple days ago. Oh, okay, here we go. Curse of knowledge. Curse of knowledge, your bias. This is a cognitive bias, right? You have logical fallacies and cognitive biases here, right? In other words, reasons why we don't think so good. Here are a bunch of reasons why we don't think so good, right? Card by card, point by point. And one of them is called curse of knowledge. Once you understand something, you presume it to be obvious to everyone. Once you understand something, you presume it to be obvious to everyone. Oh, that never happens to me. It can be hard to remember our own prior state of confusion when we didn't understand something. When teaching someone something new, go slow without being patronizing. Curse of knowledge. It's a bias, right? It can bias you. Ugh, how do you not know this? Jesus, everybody knows this, you bloody moron, right? Yeah, don't do that to people. It's not nice. Okay. A couple of things I wanted to monologue on a little bit before we get to your questions. Keep them coming in here. They're rolling on in. First thing is, I wanted to share with you something I thought might be interesting and useful in terms of introspection and dealing with our nonsense that we carry around with us, and specifically dealing with negative self-talk. This is nothing but advice, but I thought it was useful and interesting to me, and so as I want to do, I will share this with you guys, because maybe it might be interesting or useful to some of you. Negative self-talk, negative feedback loops, things that literally are little neural loops in our brain, apparently, that can get like a record that just is on spin, right? Just rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat of, you suck, you're horrible, you're awful, you can't do this, you're never going to amount to anything, you know, all the things that, whether I'm saying the right words conceptually, you understand how we talk to ourselves. And sometimes we talk to ourselves in a way that we would never, ever, ever allow anybody else to talk to us. Like we say, like we talk to ourselves, right? We can really, really be down on ourselves. That's not great, right? It's not great to talk to yourself that way, to put yourself down or invalidate or insult yourself all the time, because it is how you see yourself is reflective of how you're going to act about yourself, right? If you think you're a loser and you suck and everything in your life is horrible and doomed to fail, then you're going to act accordingly, and you're not even going to try to do things or achieve things or, you know, that you could pull off, because you pull in your flippers and until you're in your little shell and you're not reaching out at all. And so I figured this isn't a problem that only I have, and I certainly do have this problem. But in therapy, you know, one thing that can come up that came up for me that I thought was incredible. It was a real incredible kind of moment for me. And so I thought, well, I'll share. How do you conceive of it? How do you conceive of your negative feedback loop, right? For me, I thought of it as a kind of a record, you know, that would just get on repeat. And that was sort of the visualization of it. I'm kind of a visual sort of thinker. Some people aren't, and I understand that, but we all conceive of things. Clearly, we have concepts or themes or ideas about things. Whether we visualize them or hear them in our mind or otherwise, you know, conceive of it. However you do, one thing that might be interesting to challenge and maybe tip, you know, maybe make that record skip a little bit, right? Maybe sort of like throw yourself off a little bit, and by doing so, interrupt the negative feedback loop and give yourself a little bit more of a control or causation over it, right? A little bit of like, how can I take charge of this so that it's not just going on and on and on for minutes and what feels like hours sometimes. Your whole day just is like you ragging on yourself, right? Is conceive of it in a very, very different way. And for example, I started thinking about it rather than thinking about it as a record. My therapist asked me a question about it. Oh, how do you know, it's like reading a book or something, right? And I had never, ever, ever thought about my negative feedback loops as a series of statements written in a book. But it immediately, yeah, I could think about it that way, right? It's like, here's this book, 101 Reasons Why You're a Dipshit, right? And you can just open that book and start reading line by line, and oh, this reason, and this reason, and this, oh yeah, I'm fucked, I'm this, I'm that. I suck, right? And the funny thing about it for me was that by reimagining it in a different way, I thought to myself, well, for some reason I couldn't touch the record, right? But with a book, I can close the book. Right? I can always just go, oh, I don't think I want to read from this anymore. Or I can just stop reading, right? Let me stop reading this. Maybe I could go read something else for a few minutes, right? And it's just a conception. It's just a way of visualizing or thinking about what your brain is doing. Of course, there's no book in there or record, right? But it's a way of thinking about it. And by changing it up on yourself, you introduce some novelty and some original sort of creative thinking into it, which obviously is other parts of your brain activating. And this is my theory as to why this might work. And so you're engaging other parts of the brain that sort of can be more interesting and more novel to you to overcome the, you know, negative feedback loop that you're so habituated to, right? So just some friendly advice there on that I thought might be kind of fun to share. The other thing I wanted to mention real fast, and you're going to get some content coming up on this. I've talked for the last week or two about this Chase Hughes guy. This guy's a complete grifter, and he's really pissing me off. And so it came into my world that Chase Hughes is this psych behavior expert. No, he's not. Who that's what he puts himself out there as, though. And he connected Scientology and the CIA via this Kubark manual of interrogation techniques and the Alice in Wonderland thing. And we're going to do, and I was going to do a video just addressing that false narrative that he puts out there, that Chase Hughes is saying that the CIA learned how to do interrogation, from Scientology. No, they absolutely did not. That's total bullshit. So I was going to do a video just debunking that, but the more I've looked into this Chase Hughes guy, the more clear it's become to me that his grift is a very common one out there. Not the Scientology thing, but the sort of dark psychology grift is what I've sort of been thinking about it as in terms of a label. And it's the use of, it's non-expert people for the most part, people who are self-made experts who are talking about body language, neuro-linguistic programming, other psychological traits, coercion traits, interrogation techniques, ways of manipulating or hypnosis. They bring hypnosis into this. They lean heavily on Ericksonian hypnotic techniques and introduce twists and turns and very, very hyperbolic, exaggerated statements and claims about the power of dark psychology principles, whether it's neurolinguistic programming, hypnosis, military grade stuff. They bring all these things together in a semi-conspiratorial and very manosphere kind of grift. Women fall for this too, especially in the business world. This is a business grift. The idea that the success in this dark psychology grift is most attainable and most remunerative when it comes to getting into the business world and selling businesses on you doing workshops and seminars for the employees about how to sell better, how to talk better, how to negotiate better. And some people, like Chris Voss, for example, actually are experts in the thing that they are talking about. Chris Voss is a guy who was an FBI negotiator for a very long time. And he took that knowledge and wrote a book and has put a little private private company together and does work with companies on the business side of life rather than on the fighting criminals side of life. And has had success with that because there are psychological principles, very, very valid ones, very well studied, very, very researched in the area of negotiation and communication and manipulation and influence tactics. We can look to Cialdini for this as well, right? In the business, advertising, marketing world, they lap this stuff up. And there are things to know. But then you take that, or you take bits and pieces of that, and you start extrapolating your own bullshit, like Chase Hughes does, and throwing in exaggerated claims like, I can teach you how to hypnotize any woman in an hour. I can teach you how to, and Chase Hughes has actually said this, I can teach you how to create multiple personality disorder in somebody in an hour. And they won't know what you're doing to them. That's bullshit, right? That is complete and utter bullshit. But this guy has made a lot of money, selling this kind of crap. And so the small thing that he did, making this one stupid claim about Scientology, kind of led to me looking deeper into not just him as a person, but this entire grift industry that is adjacent to and using the language of coercive control and manipulation and thought reform, which is real stuff, but then you can grift off it. And it just proves to me, of course, that there isn't anything that people can get involved in that someone can't come along and grift with. you know? And it really, really makes me mad seeing people do that. Because, you know, Scientology is bad enough. We don't have to invent conspiracy theories and nonsense about CIA interrogation techniques and how the CIA was working with L. Ron Hubbard. There is no way that's possible. My opinion, my expert opinion, because there are a couple of things, just a couple of things I get to say I'm an expert in. Scientology is one of them and coercive control is the other. Right? Those are the two things I get to talk about with real knowledge. And there is no way, in my opinion, that L. Ron Hubbard was ever in cahoots with the CIA. And this is thinking that is out there. Right. And it's understandable. It's not even like people who think that are a bunch of idiots. You can connect dots that you know, make you go, oh yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. But it doesn't really make sense. And if you know more about it, you would understand why it doesn't really make sense. I've explained it here many times. So anyway, just wanted to let you guys know a little bit about what's on my mind, because I've been deep down this Chase Hughes rabbit hole for a couple days this last week. And it was just really making me mad how, you know, that because it's part of the manosphere, right? It's part of this like Rogan, you know, sort of internet dark web thing, right? Where men, young men especially, are being introduced to these ideas of how to get along, how to succeed in life, how to get women, how to get rich. And, you know, Grant Cardone is in this world with his whole 10X bullshit, right? There are a lot of grifters in the space, and they are trying to make an awful lot of money by selling success in a really weird, different way, right? You had the Tony Robbins, Werner Erhard versions of selling success through neurolinguistic programming and large group awareness training formats. And then you get these guys, right, who kind of build on that. It's sort of this progression of ideas as they move forward. Like you get Scientology, it progresses into you know, sort of with the cultural changes and shifts, you get the human potential movement, and you get you know, the mind dynamics and all these groups in the 70s, and this is where EST comes from, but it's an outgrowth of Scientology, really. And so things progress forward through time. And so I see what Chase Hughes and these manosphere folks are doing as the next stage of progression of con. You know, how to con people by getting them to think you're selling them secrets of how to manipulate and influence and control people around you, and they won't even know you're doing it to them while you're doing it, right? And for those of us who actually know more about how influence and hypnosis and thought reform work, you realize it's a far more subtle and directed activity than that, and it's not so easy to just wave your hand or, you know, a watch in front of somebody or something and suddenly they are your, you know, mental slave. It really doesn't quite work like that, you know. So yeah, so I just wanted to kind of throw those ideas out there at the beginning of the show here today, because that's what's on my mind and because that's what some future stuff is going to see. I got this guy I'm going to interview about Chase Hughes and about neurolinguistic programming, by the way. That's another thing. If you all have heard of, maybe you've heard of it. It's actually a development from the late 1970s and 1980s, so it's pretty old stuff, neurolinguistic programming. Total nonsense. It's just, for a long time, there was a lot of mystique built up around NLP, and it doesn't deserve any of it any more than Scientology does. It's a set of ideas about psychology that are mostly debunked and mostly bullshit, right? Like the idea, here's an NLP idea for you, just in case you're not familiar, right? Like, have you ever heard Oh yeah, the body language people do this even now, right? Oh yeah, if you ask somebody a question or they're thinking about something and they look down and to their left, they're accessing their visual memory. Whereas if they're looking down and to the right, they're accessing their creative memory, or this kind of thing, right? This is nonsense. There's no truth to that at all. This has been studied, formally debunked, but people persist in thinking about it the same way they persist in thinking about anti-vax rhetoric because it sounds so intriguing, but there's no truth to it. That's NLP. Right, in a nutshell. There's some things in NLP that are interesting and useful, but most of it is complete crap. Okay, so future subject of future content on this channel, so y'all can watch for that. Now let's get to your questions. This being a Q&A show and all, let's go to the top and get to it. Here we go. Come on up on the screen here. I should have. There it is. Okay. How do you think Scientologists would react to questions such as how was Hubbard able to rise above the bank? Or do you think Hubbard discovered OWs during self-auditing? I like that second one. Okay. These two questions I will take up. I'll address specifically, right? How was Hubbard able to rise above the bank? Well, according to Keeping Scientology Working, the policy letter, right? We won't ask that question. Here's how I conceived of it when I was a Scientologist. I thought Hubbard was somehow a big being. And I thought he was somehow had a larger than normal or average endowment of theta or something that made him special or made him different, that he could do that he could somehow rise above the bank and figure it out. I also thought for a long time, and one of the reasons, in fact, that I did spend so much of my time studying Scientology when I was a Scientologist, is because I wanted to understand how Hubbard did it. And I wanted to figure out the step-by-step, piece-by-piece path of discovery, because I believed L. Ron Hubbard was some kind of master observer and researcher. I was dead wrong about the researcher part. He was a horrible researcher, but he was an observer of people. There's no question about it. You cannot get to the level of master manipulator the way Hubbard was without being an observer of human behavior. And Hubbard did observe a lot of things about people and how they act and how they react to things. But I thought, of course, that he was a good-hearted man who, had our best interests at heart. And so I read and studied Scientology from the perspective of, I want to figure out how he did it. And it's all here, so the answers must be here in this path of research. And I think I wasn't alone in that kind of thinking. Maybe I was a unique bright bulb in Scientology that way, but I don't think so, right? I think a lot of people want to understand, as Scientologists, they want to understand life, themselves, the universe. That's why they're there, Some people just want to hop, skip, and jump up the OT levels and just get all the goodies that they think are waiting for them at the end of the rainbow, right? But some people in Scientology, a lot of people, want to get trained. They want to become auditors. They want to really get their wits around life. And Hubbard says, we've got the whole foundation and backbone of life all figured out. It's all in here in these materials. All you got to do is read it and understand it. Well, great. Let me read it and understand it, you know? So I think the answer to, you know, how would Scientologists react to questions such as how was Hubbard able to rise above the bank is going to be answers like, well, I don't know, but I'm glad he did. Or, well, it was a path by path. It was a step by step research process for him. He had to overcome it the same way any of us would, but he had such drive or tone 40 intention or, you know, cognitions about, you know, life and survival early on, you know, with Excalibur and that kind of stuff. That's the mythical lore within Scientology about Excaliburs, that Hubbard had figured some shit out really early on, and then came Dianetics later on in his life, right, when he was able to apply his principles to others and test them out and come up with a means of rehabilitating or recovering people's trauma and undoing it, right? This is the narrative. And I believed that narrative, and believing that, I figured somehow Hubbard had a knack for how to see and observe and pull out, as he himself said, pull out the important parts. You know, here's a page, Hubbard talked about this. Here's a page from Krishnamurti. And babble, babble, nonsense, nonsense, little tiny bit of truth. Babble, babble, nonsense, nonsense, right? Krishnamurti's full of shit, in other words. But here's a really very useful truth in the middle of Krishnamurti's work. Extract, right? Hubbard had the ability to excise that truth and dump all the bullshit, right? And that's how I thought of Hubbard as a Scientologist. I didn't think of him in a supernatural, you know, deity way. I thought of him this way. And I think a lot of people in Scientology, especially those who get trained in Scientology, become auditors, think along the same lines. You know, so I think that's the answer to that. As far as the other question, though, this is a funny one. Do you think Hubbard discovered OWs during self-auditing? That's a funny question within a Scientology world. But no, the answer to the question, of course, is no. Of course he didn't, because I can pull out History of Man and show you dead-x from 1951, right? And there's OWs right there. Hubbard was talking about overts and withholds back in 1951 with the deserved action, and, you know, that's what the dead-x thing was. It was a basically overt motivator sequence, which is the idea that you commit an overt, you do something bad, and then you imagine that this person you committed the overt against must have done something to deserve it. That's the deserved action, right? So then you dream up what it is they did to you first that prompted you to commit this overt against them, and that's called a motivator. And Hubbard says you commit the overt, then you get the motivator, and that's the illusion. That's the way you trap yourself, is you are making up these motivators for what motivated you to commit the overt, but really it's just a justification for the bad thing that you did, which the person didn't deserve and didn't prompt you to do, right? So anyway, that's all 1951 stuff, long before there was any self-auditing or solo auditing going on. So that would be the answer to that question. Anyway, so there you go. All right, let's carry on here. Okay, here we go. ROE. Are you in possession of the truth? Is it possible you are wrong about the groups you discuss? Of course it is. I've been wrong lots of times about lots of stuff. What I do on this channel is I do my best to research things that I talk about, or speak within the knowledge that I have, or the experience that I have of things. I do not believe that I am sitting on some sacred pile of truth or special knowledge. I share my sources. I share where I get, my information from. If I constantly refer to sources when I can, or when it occurs to me to do so, and I think that's pretty constant. if I say I'm uttering an opinion or if I'm giving an opinion about something, I try to label it as such, let you know this is my opinion, right? I've done that today. And I do not think that I have any special line in to sacred lore. I think that there are objective truths in this world that I like to find and hold on to. And I try to base my conclusions or ideas or reasoning on objectively true things that can be proven. But there's an awful lot in this world that is just really based only on opinion or subjective realities. You know, our emotional needs that drive us are an objective fact. It's an objectively true fact that human beings have emotional needs. I don't think that's a controversial statement, for example. I suppose somebody could challenge me on that. So I suppose in that, with information like that, like the existence of emotional needs, the existence of moral foundations that we carry around with us, I think those are objectively true things that are universally true. So I suppose in that sense, I believe that I am in possession of the truth. But I don't think that it's a special sacred truth. I think it's a way of framing or categorizing the chaotic and confusing things that drive us, right? A brain, a nervous system, a body, social networks that exist around us, you know, the push and pull of these things are what drive us through our life and cause us to behave the way that we do. So you can kind of lay a framework on top of all of that chaos and confusion of impulses and feelings and motivations and directions and commands and influences. You can sort of lay a template over that and go, okay, well, let's categorize some of these impulses and needs and desires and biological urges, and let's call those emotional needs. And then let's take an even deeper level of that, and let's call that moral foundations. It's just a way of categorizing things and thinking about things. That's why it's called a model, right? That's these models of us, of our behavior or our actions. So that's not the only model or the only way of thinking about the chaos and confusion that drives us. There are other models. There are other ways of thinking about it. And to that degree, I don't think I'm holding on to the truth, but I think I have a truth, a way of thinking about it that could be useful or helpful to people. That's what I believe I'm in possession of. And so that's why my ideas or opinions about these things are always subject to negotiation or rethink or challenge, right? Or question, because I don't think that, the frameworks that we use are infallible. They're not. We're human beings. We got all kinds of fallibilities, and I am at the top of the heap of people who have fallibilities. Oh boy, right? And so, so that's what I can say about that. Is it possible I'm wrong about the groups I discuss? I suppose. I mean, anything is possible. I tend to base my ideas and opinions and the facts that I present based on, for example, people's testimonials, my own experiences, my own learning about things. So I try to fall back on, things that are outside of my head. But, if I say things that are objectively, factually wrong, I don't mind being corrected about that stuff. And in fact, there have been instances where I have even pulled whole podcast off the air, right? Nope, that's wrong. That had too much wrong in it. Off it goes, right? And I re-recorded the whole thing. There was one time when that happened where I just like, nope, pull it, re-record it, so that I could correct some, some false information, because I didn't want to propagate false information. So, so I'm willing to do that, right? If I'm proven wrong or something. Yeah. Anyway, I guess I'll just quit at that because I know you have some other questions, ROE. Okay, so let's carry on here. George Smiley, do you think the mission holders glossed over the most egregiously illogical or authoritarian aspects of Scientology so as to hold on to customers, thereby squirreling the tech? Oh, interesting question. I think, No, I don't think the mission holders did that. Now, I'm thinking, George, that you're talking about, the old school mission holders from, say, California or, Florida, or the places where missions have classically in Scientology history really had success. And the most successful time of the missions, the Scientology missions, for those of you who don't know, are the lowest level service organizations of Scientology. They are operated by individuals who are sold the right to, who basically buy from the church the right to use the trademarks and service marks of Scientology, and can basically run their little missions, their organizations, however they see fit. They have to pay for it all. They got to pay the rent and, get a building and get the staff and do the recruitment. They got to do it all themselves. And they get sold a package of goods to, to books and films and stuff by the church, and away they go. And back in the this used to be called franchises. Then Hubbard changed the language to be more religious when he went from franchise to mission, but it was the same concept. So the mission holders of the 1970s were the absolutely most successful missions of any time period in Scientology. The 70s was an incredible growth period for Scientology. And Hubbard and Miscavige saw to it that was absolutely cut off at the knees in the early 1980s. And they destroyed the mission network, and made sure that it wasn't, they almost salted the earth. I mean, they really made sure it wasn't ever going to grow back to its height of success. So I believe, George, you're asking me about those mission holders, or that time when they have to gloss over the most egregiously illogical or authoritarian aspects to hold on to customers. Okay, cool. And you're confirming that right there. Good. So having been around the Pasadena missions, the what was called SCS, Scientology Coordinated Services. That was an umbrella organization that was created by Carl Barney to run his missions, because he had a number of them: San Diego, Santa Barbara, a few others, right? And they had their own internal policies that was written by Carl Barney or by his subordinates, and that were, similar to L. Ron Hubbard policies. Back at that time, it was Diana Hubbard who was ostensibly in charge of the missions from the level of the Sea Org, and they answered to her, and she reported to Hubbard. And 10% of the mission income was the money that did come up from the missions, which I think was 10% of their income, was used exclusively by Scientology to fund the legal defenses. And in 1977, when the church was raided, they needed a lot more money than the missions were sending up for their legal bills all of a sudden. And so that was one of the reasons why Hubbard went wackadoodle in the late 70s and targeted the missions and the mission holders for their money, because they were incredibly successful and they were making money hand over fist. And Hubbard thought of it all as his money, not theirs. And so he decided that they were ripping him off, and he sent Miscavige and his goon squad down. And in the 1980s, you can look this stuff up, there was the infamous mission holders conferences and that kind of thing. But the mission holders were no angels. Um, Bent Corden, Carl Barney. Trying to remember some of the other names of some of the other mission holders. They're just escaping me right now. These were not good guys. They saw the potential for income and business in Scientology, and they had a business mindset and a growth mindset, but they had a business mindset, a way better head on their shoulders than L. Ron Hubbard, and a way better at organizing things and marketing things and presenting a good public image. The missions looked and felt way more comfortable and inviting and friendly than the orgs did, right? And the orgs were being run more directly by Hubbard on a day-by-day, week-by-week, micromanagement level. The missions were more left alone. And so these guys who had pretty solid business sense, John Woodruff in Orange County, he was another one, right? He became the ED Orange County, but he was a mission holder before that. And these were powerhouse guys. These were strong, certain, charismatic, leader types. And they could get people to work with them, but they were kind of dicks. And I think they recognized or were turned into, the worst versions of themselves through Scientology, because that's what it does to people. And so I don't think they glossed over the most egregious, illogical, or authoritarian aspects of Scientology, but what they did do is smartly fold those in to their operation so that they could interpret, because it's all really a matter of how you interpret the policies. Until you get to the level of OSA and the real hardcore stuff, and nobody at the mission level was involved in that, you don't really see the really dark side of Hubbard come out. You can read between the lines in a lot of lower level policies and get some really crappy stuff out of it, but you can also interpret it in a different way. And one of the things I've said over the years is that Miscavige chose to interpret a lot of Hubbard's policies in the most damaging and destructive way possible. Like the sexual control that Miscavige demands, no masturbation, stuff like that. That's Miscavige. Hubbard didn't say stuff like that. So you can interpret Hubbard's words in a very illogical and authoritarian way, or you can take it and go, well, let's tone this down a little bit, right? Let's not highlight this policy. Let's highlight this other one. You can kind of play around with it a little bit and present a kinder, nicer version of Scientology. And that's what missions were all about. Missions were supposed to be the epitome of kindness and support and comfortable, experiences. Missions were not at all ever supposed to be heavy ethics. Hubbard wrote policies specifically stating, don't go heavy ethics on missions. Missions don't do heavy ethics stuff, right? The real authoritarian stuff. That's not what we're doing at the mission level. Hubbard was cogent enough to know that much. And the mission holders would act accordingly, right? So you didn't go into a mission and get the heavy hand. Not till you were involved on staff in the mission and you started fucking up did the crazy come out, for the most part. I'm not saying everything was angelic and beatific and wonderful at the mission level. It wasn't, but you had to work a little harder to see that, I hope I'm communicating clearly here. So, and you can look to, for example, years and years ago, I did a series of interviews with my mom where we talked about this disparity, this difference, this wildly huge difference between 1970s kinder, gentler Scientology at the mission level versus what I experienced at staff and Sea Org level in the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s. So Scientology did change too, right? Culturally, as well as through its interpretation of Hubbard's words. So that's what I guess I'll say about all that. So I don't continue going on in a mad rate, but give you a decent answer. Hope that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, great, George. Good. I'm glad you Glad that cleared up a lot. Excellent. Okay, let's carry on. Once a witness. Do you think Jenna Miscavige's appearances on national news talking about her uncle and Scientology will accelerate the cult's demise? Did you know Jenna and her parents while in Scientology? Okay, great. Yes, I think Jenna exposing Scientology is going to help forward the demise of Scientology. Yes, of course I do. I understand she's on TikTok getting millions of views, and good for her. So yeah, sure. And then as far as did I know her or her parents while in Scientology? No, I knew of her parents, but I did not know her parents. There were other international executives that I met in person. Dan Kuhn, what was her name? There was this woman, quality exec-int, Vicky. Anyway, there were a few int execs that I met over the years. Sue Kuhn, Dan's wife at the time, right? He left the Sea Org and got remarried. But I did not meet Jenna's dad. Ronnie Miscavige. Yeah, Ronnie. I was trying to remember his name there. Yeah, never met him. He was marketing executive international when I was in. And then he just disappeared. And I never really knew what happened to him until I got out. Now I know. Okay. Joe DeCeppo. Hey, Joe. Sorry, one second. Last week, you said ideas like saving the world or making a difference are common among former cult members. Mm-hmm. How did you dump that while still fulfilling the human need to have meaning in life? Oh, wow. Okay, great question. Really good one, because I spent years on, I mean, you guys know, I ranted and ranted and ranted to you guys about saving the world, right? Man, did that get into my head. Yeah, Vicky Asnaran. That wasn't the Vicky I was thinking of, but yes, Vicky Asnaran. What was her? She was the outer org. She was the DCO for outer org trainees at Flag for a long time. Then they bumped her up. Anyway, saving the world, making a difference. How did I dump that? It took a long ass time. Man, that stuff went deep. I mean, really deep. And I figured out with my REM model why. I'm just going to keep talking to you guys about my REM model because I'm just so excited about it and because I think it has so much utility. And here's an example of that, right? Like, you know, you talk about the cognitive layer, the emotional layer, and then the moral layer. And the moral layer for me was, the moral layer is not just about rules and regulations or ideas about what's right and wrong and good and bad, but it really is the sort of set of values and ideas we adopt that bring or give us a sense of order in our world, right? How things are supposed to be. That's kind of where our morality lives. And my morality was all wrapped up in my value being to humanity being, you know, how many people I could help, how much good I could do, how much of a difference I could make in the big wide world, to save the world, to help people not be consumed by their negativity and their trauma and their passions and their violence and their anger, but, you know, kind of raise them up from that and let's make a better world. And this was what I was all about when I was in Scientology. This was the thing that drove me and kept me there. You know, those moral hooks. And they were strong, really strong. And they were built on ideas that actually aren't even true, but I thought they were true. Ideas like, you know, one man can change the world. That's debatable, you know. The world needs saving. That's another assumption that I just thought was true. And not really. You know, the world doesn't need saving. The world's going to be fine. You know, as I love George Carlin says, right? You know, the planet doesn't need saving. The planet's going to be fine. We're going away, right? So I thought, people could use a hand and that kind of thing. And I thought I would, throw my back into the effort. And after I left Scientology, I still felt that way. And my world was still ordered around those ideas. So that's the recovery part. That addressing that deep stuff is where recovery really lives, is what recovery is all about. From a cult thing is going deep into those principles, those values, and unhooking them from the cult mindset, right? From the cult paradigm of, well, I have to do this because this is what makes me valuable as a human being. This is the reason why I matter. This is the reason why I even exist, is so I can, do this, right? And it's like, well, those are ideas you have, but that doesn't necessarily, that's not objective truth, right? You can exist for other reasons. You can have other values. You can change your mind. But boy, did it take me years to learn that. And it's not and it's because it's not just cognitive layer stuff. It's deeper emotional and moral stuff. And that stuff is the stuff that's closer to, laying right on top of who you are as a core personality, right, if you will. So it's deep stuff. Took me forever to even to see it that way, much less start tearing it apart and really challenging myself on those ideas over and over and over again. One of the things that I've learned about this recovery thing over the years, and I'm sure this is very, very obvious to many of you, but it wasn't very obvious to me for the longest time, is that there's no one and done with this deep-rooted stuff. It's going to take, you got to hit, it's death by 1,000 cuts. You got to hit it, and then you got to hit it a different way, and then a different way to take it apart, because it doesn't surrender to a one and done. And very, very rarely do our moral values just change on a dime. Our ideas can change on a dime. Our belief in Xenu could change on a dime. But belief in Xenu isn't a moral value. There's a moral values holding the belief in Xenu in place. And you can get rid of the Xenu belief and still have those moral anchors keeping you in that same level of mindset. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's what it took me forever to address and realize, that there wasn't an easy way to do that. It was hit it again, hit it again, hit it again. And that's why I talked about it so much with you guys over the years of this channel and these shows, bringing this exact topic up of saving the world. Yeah, I wanted to save the world. I was struggling to let it go the entire time I'm talking to you guys about it. Yeah, I know saving the world is ridiculous. Saving the world is a nonsensical idea. Cognitively, I knew that. But emotionally and morally, gotta let it go. And it just took forever to let it go, and still find, what value do I have? And how can I realize that value? Because saving the world is ridiculous. It's a young person's fantasy, right? And I was a young person and I fantasized. And that's fine. It's the nature of young people to do that. This isn't like I'm going to change young people. This is stage of development stuff. This is really root psychology of human behavior kind of stuff. So I don't imagine that I'm going to, say things like it's a young person's game and you guys are going to, oh yeah, we just need to educate them out of it. Right? Young people are going to feel like they're on a mission and a crusade to change the world, save the world, do what they're going to do. It's very, very common. And cults use that and twist it and corrupt it for their own cult needs, right? And so that's what happened to me. It happened to a lot of people. So I let go of those values or those goals or those meanings for myself, but I found new ones. And it was a slow and often painful process to let go of things that I cherished and really had as core identity issues for myself. They are not easy to, they're changeable. Anything about us is changeable. But, the degree of effort it's going to take to make that change can be, it can be formidable. And so I say that because I want to get across that it's hard work. You can do it. I believe you should do it. I believe as ex-cult members, we owe it to ourselves to dive all the way deep to the depths of who we are and who we conceive ourselves to be, so that we can undo what the cult did to us. And the longer you're in a cult situation, the deeper it's going to go into you, and the harder it's going to be to unravel the cult bullshit from who you really are, right? And if you think about it through the lens of a child, it becomes easier to clarify things like that, because I think who we really are is kind of who we really are, even as kids, right? My opinion. All of this, of course, just being my opinion. But yeah. So how did I dump that whilst fulfilling the human need to have meaning in life? I found another way to channel, a much more acceptable and realistic way for me to channel my desire to help other people, and to not beat myself up or open up my book of 101 Reasons Why I'm a Dipshit, right, and read it to myself all day because I'm not saving the world, right? Like, no, stop that. That's not helpful. It's not helping anybody, me or anybody else, to sit there and read from the, dogmatic scriptures of why I'm an asshole. Don't do that to yourself, right? Instead, find the outlet, find the road that you're supposed to, that you feel you need to be on, and get yourself on it, but put goals out there or put meaning there that is something you can fulfill. You even ask them the question, how did you dump that while still fulfilling the human need to have meaning in life? By finding things that were fulfilling, that I could accomplish. Because I can't save the world. And if I sit here in this room and at that computer writing or reading or studying or consulting or working with people in any capacity, thinking this is good, but I'm not doing enough because I'm not saving the world, right? That's the trap. That is a trap. And it's a trap cult leaders are happy to put you in, because you'll never get out of it while you're in that group, and the social pressures are keeping you in that trap. And they're happy to have you there because you'll work and slave and die for them. You'll martyr yourself trying to fulfill a goal that can't be fulfilled. So pull it back. And don't tell yourself, like we did in the cult, oh, I'm just not good enough. I'm just not, able to rise to the occasion. I'm not tone 40. Whatever the language is that we tell ourselves, right? Now, fuck all that. Change the script. Flip the script on yourself. That's all of that is what it's taken me to do that. I hope that helps. That's a lot. It's a good question. It's a tough one. Okay. Let's carry on here. All right. X-Cyan asks, great Mormon show yesterday. Thank you. Would you consider moving to Utah? I know a couple that's planning to move to Utah. Should I be concerned they will be converted to Mormons? Oh, Lourdes, make sure you get your question in the question box. Otherwise, I can't pull it up on the screen and answer it. So if you're going to ask questions on the show, and I encourage you to do so, make sure you get it in the right place in the comments box so that I can get to it. Okay. No, I would not consider moving to Utah. I don't want to live in a theocracy. And everything I've said about Utah and the Mormons, I believe to be true, including the fact that Utah is a theocracy run by the Mormon Church. And I don't want any part of that. Should you be concerned they'll be converted to Mormonism? I mean, I don't know about concerned. There are tons and tons of non-Mormons who live in Utah. Just because you move there doesn't mean you're going to be converted. But on the other hand, it's worth having a conversation with your friends about if you're actually worried about it or concerned. You know, talk to them about it. What, do they have another religion or belief system that they subscribe to? Or are they looking for answers? Are they looking for community? Are they looking for guidance and help in their life? If they are, the Mormons are going to be more than happy to fulfill those roles, and will put there very, very strongly that that couple, your friends, should join up with and become part of the Mormon Church, especially if they think of family as something important to them. Family is a huge button in the Mormon communities. So you should be concerned about them if those are things that they care about. At least have the conversation with them about what Mormonism is, what it's about, what they do, what they believe, and how they approach things, right? The Mormons are not overtly violent people. They are not going to, you know, come in and take all your money overnight or something. But Mormons are have a very, very heavy bias towards or proclivity towards multi-level marketing schemes. They love multi-level marketing schemes in the Mormon communities, and that is a danger to people who get involved with Mormons, is they will end up being sold on MLM stuff too. It's not just the Mormon faith and church community that people can get involved in there. It's also the MLM industry. There's hundreds of MLM companies out there, and they thrive in Mormon communities. So that's something to know and be aware of. Okay, ROE. Do you promote an idea that caution, skepticism, and solitude are safer and superior to openness, trust, risk-taking, and failing, and adopting beliefs and fully engaging in a community? Hmm. No, I don't think so. I don't think I'm promoting that idea as a binary or as a two sides of a coin that are opposites. I don't believe that caution, if we have over here caution, skepticism, and solitude, and we have over here openness, trust, risk-taking, and failing, if these are opposing things, do I promote that this is safer and superior to this? No. I would not say conceptually that that's what I'm trying to do. But I absolutely could see how someone could read that into what I say and talk about on this channel. So that's an interesting question, and I'm glad you asked it. Caution, skepticism, cautious skepticism, critical thinking, emotional intelligence are tools, are disciplines of thinking and reacting or behaving, which can be applied to any situation or circumstance that you find yourself involved in. You can be a cautious, skeptical person and be all by yourself and live alone in solitude, as you say, and feel safe. because you have issues with people or community or trust. Really is really where the issue lies, right? You distrust people, you distrust authority, you distrust, groups of people or people telling you what to do or people controlling you in some way. There's trust issues there, right? You can also be cautiously skeptical or critically thinking in an open, trusting, risk-taking way. You can bring that same set of disciplines and thought processes into a trusting, but not have the trust issues, right? You can go in and be part of groups or be part of new activities or startup or, relationships or something, and let's do it. Let's go. Let's be open. Let's trust. Let's take some risks, right? Let's fail. Sure, of course you can. And you could still be skeptically, cautiously skeptic or, critically thinking in those situations too. It really depends on what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish. You can be toxically open, or you can be open to a healthy degree. You can be trusting to an extreme level, or you can be trusting to too reserved. You can be too reserved, right, with your trust. I'm not going to trust anybody, right? You can pull in the flippers, or you can put them out too much. You can take risks in a cautious, skeptical way, or you can take risks in a reckless, endangering way. Right? And so you could therefore fail by being too open, too trusting, taking too many risks. You can fail. You can adopt beliefs and be engaged in a community in a healthy way or in an unhealthy way. One might imagine that, a cult is a situation of adopting beliefs and fully engaging in a community to an unhealthy degree. So I don't promote that. I promote being part of whatever belief set you're going to be part of and whatever community you're going to be part of. My advice would be cautious, skeptical, and aware, have situational awareness of what's going on around you, but still engage to the degree that is healthy for you. And everybody's got their own levels of this. And some of us should open up more, and some of us should close up a little bit more. Right? Some of us are a little too open and too trusting. So you want to find that contextually correct line, to navigate. And I say contextually correct because every situation that is going to present itself to you or that you're going to walk into is going to be different. So I believe that understanding yourself and understanding the situation that you're in can guide you better, can help you to not get taken advantage of or not be controlled coercively, but still allow you to be open and trusting and take risks and fail and adopt beliefs and be engaged in a community. I think all of those are possible. And in fact, I believe in my rhetoric over the past many months and years, I've encouraged people to be open with their neighbors, be in touch with their community, get involved, organize ideologically or politically, right? Like get out there and get busy. If you don't like what's happening, go do something about it. But don't imagine you're going to do that by yourself, right? It takes working with other people in order to affect change at that level. So get involved and take some risks and, you know, get out there with some folks, right? I've said these words. So I think I'm approaching the advice that I give, I think is from a, you know, practical level in that sense. But I always tell people at the same time, right? That's not hypocritical. I don't see hypocrisy in this to say, be cautious, be aware, watch people, watch what they do, not just what they say. What are their policies when it comes to politics, right? What's their agenda? Not what do they say, what do they do? Because that's where the danger lies, and that's where the manipulation always exists, is the differences between the statements versus what is done, you know? Okay, so yes, and remember to click the upvote, that's right. Okay, so that's that one. Good questions, ROE. Thanks for these. Okay, in fact, here's another one from ROE. How come you never say, I know nothing about this or that group and have no experience with that group and I cannot comment? But I do. I've said that many times. You just haven't seen me do it because I guess you haven't watched all my shows. And that's fine. I got a lot of shows. A lot. I know. I get it. But I do say that. I say that all the time. People have asked me questions this year on this show. And I said, I don't know, because I don't have any experience with that group. And I don't have anything to say about it because I don't know. Mescalism. There was an example, right? Mescalism came up multiple times. And it took me forever to figure out what the hell that was. And until I did, I said, I don't have any idea what this is. I can't comment on it. Okay, so just watch me more, because if you think that's what I'm about, then you just aren't watching me enough. All right, Once a Witness, Vernon. Did Hubbard have assistance with writing his first book, Dianetics? Did any of his wives help him write any of his book? No, Hubbard did not have his wives help him with his books. He did not have assistance from his wives or others that I'm aware of in writing Dianetics, other than he had Campbell and Dr. Winter, and I think 2 other people who were kind of working with or advising him in some fashion as a sort of friend group, kind of informal sort of thing, before Dianetics was published or written as a formal body. He had put together this original thesis, and he'd been talking to Campbell and, you know, Astounding Magazine, and working with people, doing this hypnotic technique on them and getting them to feel better or blow out, you know, oh, wow, I'm amazed, you fixed my back, blah, 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 right? And so he had that degree of assistance. I think his wife probably helped him organize a few things, because Hubbard was just not good at organizing stuff. But that's an assumption on my part. I have no hard evidence that his wife, Sarah, at the time, no, not Sarah. Yeah, no, wait a minute, Sarah, yeah. I don't think she did anything to, no. Yeah. Okay, anyway, sorry, just getting my timelines mixed up there for a second. Yeah, I don't think Sarah helped him with the actual writing of any of his books that I'm aware of. Okay, let's move on. George Smiley, other than RTC, was there a branch of the Sea Org that was uniformly resented, feared, or hated by other Sea Org members? Oh, sure. Yeah, CMO. Oh, yeah, the talking pet buttons. That's right. I didn't know about any of that either. Okay, so was there a branch of the Sea Org that uniformly resented, feared, or hated by other Sea Org members? Yeah, CMO, the Commodore's Messenger Org. They were the guys who basically kind of took over from in the 70s, 80s, right? The CMO messengers, Mark Yeager, Miscavige at the time, some of the others, were Hubbard's personal guard, so to speak, right? They were the inner circle. They were the ones who were entrusted to deliver Hubbard's messages and relay communication back and forth from and to him. And they were trained in special drills and exercises where they would not only duplicate what Hubbard said, but how he said it. You know, so he would tell them, you know, go talk to Joe Schmo and rip his face off, you know, and find out why he hasn't gotten this order executed right. And so they would go to him, Joe, poor Joe Schmo, and, you know, it wasn't just, hey, Joe, how come you're not getting this done? It was, motherfucker, you know, and, you know, this kind of thing, right? You know, Miscavige spit on a guy one time, right? Because I think Hubbard told him to, you know, just to demonstrate his contempt. John Axel was the man's name who was spit on. I knew him in the Sea Org. He didn't tell me that story. I read about it after I got out. John Axel was perhaps one of the most mild-mannered, nicest men I ever met in the Sea Org. I couldn't believe when I read later on that that Miscavige had actually spit on him at Hubbard's direction. I was just absolutely blown away by that. I couldn't think of a better example of just absolute overkill, you know, in somebody's direction. But that's the nature of the CMO, right? Is they saw themselves as the elite within the elite. The CMO are absolutely the most arrogant and conceited Sea Org members anywhere on the planet, right? The CMO is chock-a-block full of the most arrogant fucking people. And you watch it happen to them. I watched it. I watched young girls go into the Sea Org as normal, regular, rational young girls. I'm talking 13, 14, 15 years old. When I was in the Sea Org, these girls would get recruited and they were clean, you know, history, perfectly qualified to go in the CMO, no weird sex stuff, no weird relationship stuff, very malleable, very willing to take orders, very willing to get in other people's faces. And they would take these girls and they would mold them into absolute horror shows. Really, really just the worst possible versions of themselves. Mean-spirited, angry, resentful, contemptuous. They would just come at you and you could just, you know, they would just create this hatred and animosity towards you and then come at you and just rip into you. And this was regularly. I mean, they would do this daily to people all over the base. And they walked around with this attitude that they were all that in a bag of chips, so to speak, right? It's a weird expression. I never have really liked that expression, but it's a fitting one here, you know? They really did think of themselves as all that. It was really something to watch people get busted out of CMO and watch them revert back to being regular people. As regular as you can be in the Sea Org, of course, but you know what I mean? Like compared to people in the CMO, regular Sea Org members are generally pretty chill people. The CMO girls were just out of their goddamn minds, right? And there were guys in there too, but it was mostly women. And they were the ones who would do RTC's bidding. So the RTC reps, at the PAC base, for example, my experience with RTC was intimidation, fear, you know, terror even, at being called in to see them or dealing with them. But generally speaking, the RTC representatives and staff didn't act towards you the way the CMO girls did. They didn't have to. They could be above that and pretend even that they didn't quite even know that that was happening, or sort of not have to deal with that part of what they were doing, right? They were above that. And they just expected, you know, when you went and talked to somebody from RTC, they very rarely, they did when they needed to, believe me, they did, but they didn't have to raise their voice. They didn't have to do more than sort of sneer at you or look at you like, what? And you were ruined. I mean, you were just, you know, oh my God, I'm so sorry, you're practically begging and pleading, crying for forgiveness because they're frowning at you. That's the kind of altitude the RTC guys have. But the CMO guys could have that kind of altitude, but instead, what they do is act in a resentful, hateful, mean-spirited way toward you. And it's really sort of domination by authority and hostility, right? And negation. Things Hubbard wrote are not cool. He wrote in Science of Survival, early textbook of Scientology, you know, domination by authority, domination by intimidation. This is what low tone level people do. This is not a good thing to be doing to people. But then his core messengers, the people who represented Hubbard, acted that way all the time. And that's why I believe the answer would be, you know, them, the CMO, as far as resented, feared, or hated. We hated them. And we would even, I mean, so much so that when I was at AO, we even openly talked about it, right? I mean, we just flat out were like, these girls have no fucking clue what the hell they're doing or what they're talking about. Because not only are they yelling and screaming at you, but they're giving you some of the stupidest, most asinine things to do that have nothing to do with your job, nothing to do with getting your products, nothing to do with getting anything useful done. It's just some person, I'm gonna keep my language under control today. Some person coming and just ripping you apart. You really have to experience it to believe it. It's, you know, the same thing does happen. And some of you have experienced it in the corporate world. You've had those bosses. You've had those, you know, CEO types or executive types who are really full of their own power. They're so self-aware of how much power they have, and they just can't wait to remind you and sort of whet their appetite for meanness on you. You know those people. I'm sure you've run into them. The CMO created that kind of person on purpose in the body of a 15-year-old girl. Not some asshole dude, right, with an MBA, or some woman who's risen to, you know, this position of power and is so afraid that people are going to take it from her that she treats everybody like complete garbage, right? This is kids, for the most part, who are turned into that. And that was one of the things about the CMO that was truly sickening. Even when I was in the Sea Org, we would, you know, it's just, what the hell are they reading and doing in there? Because you could see there was like, with one time, there was this girl who was the nicest girl. I mean, she was just a wonderful person. And you could see the day that she started reading whatever it is that Hubbard wrote for the CMO people, because I never did see very much of the confidential CMO stuff. It's still hidden away in the church. Much of this stuff has not leaked out of the church. But there are confidential CMO issues and TRs even, drills they do to be CMO messengers. And you could see the day they start getting into that stuff, because they change, you know, and they come at you, and it's so different. Night and day different. All right, enough about that. Young Matador. Hey, Chris, how do we prevent bean soup theory on the internet, i.e. specific people who, when presented with a specific topic, respond, well, that doesn't work for me, or what about me? Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a good question, young Matador, because, I was just watching something the other day about this, and not about bean soup theory, but about the natural inclination of people to instantly and immediately relate everything back to themselves. And this could be called, and often is mislabeled, as narcissism when it's not. It is simply what people do. We have to, because of the nature of our life and our mentality, we naturally frame everything against the immediate questions of, what does this have to do with me? How is this going to affect me? What threat does this pose to me? That's actually the question that drives most of that behavior. Does this present a threat to me? There's a threat assessment. And we have to do that as individuals, because if we're all individual cells in a community that is, a larger organism, we are very hyper aware of our individual existence. And we act first, generally speaking, 100% of the time, to save ourselves or make sure we continue to survive. And this can be, and often is, overwhelmed or overridden when we become parents, because the needs of the child become greater than our own needs. That's a biological thing. But it's not a general thing, because we don't all become parents. And even when we do become parents, this isn't universal as a response. There are some very, very selfish, self-centered, egotistical parents who, for whatever reason, that, my child over me doesn't quite kick in, does it? So we can't say that's a universal thing, that all parents will sacrifice themselves for their children. That's not true at all. And of course, you can be manipulated to override those biological or intrinsic, family orientations too. That's as far as I pretend to understand, the sort of biological urges of parents, right? But that's there. Point being, in answering your question, young Matador, that this sort of, looking at the world through the lens of me is a pretty universal thing as I understand it. And so that's why it's not going to be possible to prevent people doing that. Responding, well, that doesn't work for me, or well, what about me, or well, I didn't see it. I just got a comment this morning from somebody who was in the 2x2s. Well, my experience of being in the 2x2s was, it was great, and it was this, and we had Jesus, and it was all this loving scripture. So it's not a cult, because I didn't, it's not a cult. And you go, and it's exactly this, what you're asking me about. Well, that wasn't my experience. Therefore, you're wrong. It can't be that this group is a cult, right? Well, no. It can very much be a cult, even if you didn't end up being at the short end of the cult stick, That's okay. But don't say it's not a cult, because this other person had an experience, and this other person, and this other person, and these other people, they all had experiences that were horrifying for them. And you can't sit there and say, well, I didn't, and therefore they're all wrong. No, that doesn't work either, right? So people are going to do that. They do it all the damn time, but they also do, all of these all the time. We can overcome it, though, right? We can overcome it with education, with insistence, with emotion, with, emotional appeal, with narratives that people can grab onto and think with. They can recalibrate, right? And they cannot necessarily put themselves first always, all the time, right? In fact, in a lot of ways, you could think of expertise in something as a way of getting yourself out of the way, so you can just present the information as it is, not how you think about it or how you think it is. Real expertise is a level where the knowledge itself is just, here it is. It's not about what I think about it, right? Yeah, so I don't know. Throw that out there. Man, time is flying past today. This is great. Okay, ROE. Let's see if I can speed some of these up. I've been gabbing on a mad rate here. What would you do if you were not a critic? What would be your next passion that you would immerse yourself in if you dropped the whole cult thing? I answered something about this recently. Let me revisit this, I think. I don't like the label critic, by the way. I'm a cult victim who educates people about cults. I don't really get all semantic about that, but you know, I want to sit here and thinking about what would you do if you weren't a critic. I'm not a critic. I'm an author. I'm a podcaster. I'm a researcher. I'm a writer. I'm an educator, and I'm a consultant. I'm not. Critic isn't on that list. But anyway, you know, my passions go around and involve helping people. It's kind of what I live for. It's kind of my jam. I love cooking. I love other pursuits. I love filmmaking. I like graphic design stuff a little bit. Not very good at it, but I kind of enjoy it. You know, my first passion in life was to be a special effects guy. Then I wanted to be a film director. I don't really have much of a shot at becoming a film director at this point in my life, but that would be a passion that I might be interested in following if I weren't doing all the things I'm doing. Writing, I think writing books. I wanted to be a fiction book writer. That's another thing I could pursue very, very easily if I weren't so wrapped up in the things that I'm doing. But I feel that what I'm doing is more important and ultimately more satisfying to myself than doing those other things, which is why I do this work. It's not, I mean, it's not all just about me, but that's the point. It's not all just about me, right? I get to help other people. And there's just nothing in my life that even comes close to the degree of satisfaction I get from working one-on-one with people. So maybe I might, you know, I mean, if I were to redo some things, you know, could I go back and, you know, get a degree as a counselor or a therapist or something, you know, maybe. Doesn't super excite me, the idea of becoming like a clinical psychologist or something, which is a funny thing to say because I talk about how much I like to help people, but I like to help people the way I help them, which is education and listening and, you know, some kind of generalized advice in a direction sometimes, or a little bit of what about this, you know, kind of questioning sort of stuff. That's about as far as I go with people. I'm not practicing, you know, treatment modalities or doing EMDR with people or anything like that. I'm just talking to them, helping them, you know, learn stuff, education, you know. And so maybe a teacher, I mean, I guess I could do that kind of a thing. That might be kind of fun in the right venue. Stuff like that. Yeah. All right, once a witness. Does Leah's recent Substack article mean that former Scientologists with lawsuits don't have a chance of winning their cases? No, that definitely does not mean that, because Leah has a lawsuit against the Church of Scientology. And if she thought there was no chance of her winning that case or doing anything effective with it, she wouldn't be carrying out that case. As far as I know, Leah has not dropped her lawsuit. She is still pursuing it with vigor. And that means that she believes that that is a worthwhile thing for people to be doing. My hot take on Leah's ideas. Okay, Sam Slade. Thank you for your super chat earlier, Sam. Appreciated that. For public Scientology members, are there norms surrounding appearance and garb? And 2, do OSA members have perks? Other Scientology members do not. Okay, great. Little medley here. So, there are certain cultural ideas, at least when I was in, there were, about appearance nose rings. And, you know, if you walked into a Scientology church and you had one of those nose rings and earrings with a little chain joining them, right? Or you had some unusual tats and stuff like that going on, you'd get looks, you'd get comments, no question about it. You would. You absolutely would. And you are not going to get away with certain appearances and certain clothes as a staff member or as a student in the course room if you're wearing distracting stuff, or, you know, you walk into the course room with a shirt that said fuck Trump or something, or you know, go MAGA or something. There might be issues if you were too incendiary ideologically or religiously or something. Obviously, you would never be able to walk into a Church of Scientology wearing, you know, a Guy Fawkes mask or, you know, some pro-anonymous thing or something, right? They're going to have issues. You know, siding with the enemy, this kind of thing, right? Any kind of pro-psych stuff. Hell, I knew guys in Scientology who got shit because they had a goatee. You look like a psych. I saw that one time. I saw some guy get confronted because he had a goatee. You look like a psych. Okay, you know, so it's a cultural thing. You know, as far as norms go, there is a written issue in LA in the PAC base about appearance and about things you can and can't have as a Sea Org member, but not as a public person. As a public, you can get away with a lot. As a staff and Sea Org member, you're going to be more controlled. 2, do OSA members have perks other Scientology members do not? Not really. Not really. No. They have access to information and issues and references that Hubbard wrote that other Sea Org members and other Scientologists don't have access to. So to that degree, they're privy to activities and knowledge that is outside the scope of what other Scientologists have. But as far as bonuses or perks, no, not really. No, OSA's really at the blunt end of Miscavige's stick a lot. They get a lot of shit in OSA. Okay, Xion, I think I know already. Would you take possession of your PC folders if you could, and would you read anything, and what would you do with them? Oh my God, are you kidding me? Of course I would. Oh man, what a field day I would have with my PC folders. I mean, talk about a walk down memory lane. Oh, it would be wonderful if I could get my PC folders. I would have a blast with them, and I'd probably go over them with you guys because I think it would be a blast. Yeah, that's what I would do with them if I could get hold of them. Oh, I think it would be hilarious. Because there's nothing in Scientology at this point that's going to, that I'm going to read or see from my Scientology history that's going to trigger me in a negative way that I'm not going to be able to deal with. There was certain, but that's the thing. I think there's things I've forgotten all about. I mean, when you're involved in something for, 27 years of time where I was having PC folders and ethics files and student files, I mean, if I could recreate that entire timeline day by day, month by month, year by year, I would fill in so many blanks that I have right now. I mean, who remembers all that stuff? I know I don't. I'm self-aware enough to know that much, right? I think that would be a blast to see the testimonials, the success stories, the evaluations from the case supervisors and the auditors about me, what they thought of me, right? What they thought I was doing, what they thought I was up to versus what I know I was up to, right? That would be just, that'd be fun. That would be fun. It's never going to happen, but it would still be fun. Okay. ROE. Okay, here we go. How can you so casually and confidently claim that EST is an outgrowth of Scientology when you've never met Earhart or done EST? Countless people who've done both say they're unrelated. Well, that's nice that they say that they're unrelated, but I know for a fact from having seen Werner Earhart do his seminars and reading the testimonials of people who were involved in EST behind the scenes, working with Werner, working on the development of EST, when they write in their books, like Marcia did, like Anne did, Anne Peterson, when I have cult intervention specialists who've worked with over 20, 30 cases of people coming out of EST, tell me, look, they took the Scientology dictionary and they used it to define terms that Werner was using in the original EST seminars of 1971, 72, 73, 74, when they were getting Scientology like auditing on an e-meter and ethics interviews at the Werner EST organization. What else am I supposed to think? That's why I can casually and confidently claim that, because it's true. I recognize Scientology in the things Werner says because they're Scientology principles. It's not rocket science. And Werner was not a super original thinker any more than Hubbard was when it comes to his taking from different things and putting it together. People in the 1970s, journalists, people who were critical of EST, analyzed it and wrote that back then. When I was still a kid, they wrote articles saying, hey, look, this is what this guy's doing. He's taken this and mind dynamics and, you know, human potential movement stuff and Scientology stuff. I mean, Werner said, Hubbard's a genius. You know, I love the guy. I like his stuff. It's all there. It's not hard to see at all. It's a very, very pedestrian observation. In other words, it's a very simple, easy to see, anybody could see it observation that EST is full of Scientology. You know, I'm not at all stretching or reaching or making controversial claims when I say that. So that's the answer to the question. There you go. Okay, ROE, again, how are you not just as trapped now trying to save the world from cults? Well, I think I explained that today, so I don't think I need to go into that a whole lot more. I have power of choice over my life. Let me say this, right? Nobody's telling me what to do with my life. I am the captain of my ship now. There's nobody checking my battle plan every day. There's nobody checking my weekly condition formulas. There's nobody driving me on my statistics. I don't have dogma or policy on how to wash my windows, clean my room, organize my day. How do I talk to people? What do I do when I consult with people? How do I make a video? I get to decide all of those things 100% of the time. That's what it means to work for myself and have no boss. And I love it. I love it. So the only pressure on me to do what I do is coming from me. So therefore, I can say with some degree of confidence that I am not trapping myself in a loop of trying to save the world, because I'm not trying to save the world from cults, because I can't. And again, if you'd watched me for any length of time, you would have heard me say that. I don't pretend to be saving the world from cults. What I'm trying to do is help individuals who get hold of my work, listen to what I have to say, maybe have a chat with me or 2 or 3 or 5, and I can help them. But I cannot save the world from cults any more than I can save the world from eating or sleeping. Cults are a phenomena of groups and predators involved in groups and the codependency that develops between the group leadership and the followers. And that's a universal thing that is never, ever, ever going to stop happening for as long as human beings exist. So I can't save the world from cults, and I'm not pretending to. Thanks for asking. I'm just going down the list here in order, so here's a couple more. ROE, LDS people are amazing. Do you have any friends who are LDS? Utah is not run by the church because of their wealth. Both the Bingham Canyon Mine and church are large influences. Okay, thank you for those observations. To say that Utah is not run by the church is a ridiculous statement. That is very, very much a ridiculous statement made by a very unserious person. So I'm going to reply to you with that. Do I have friends who are LDS? Not now. I have had Mormon friends since leaving Scientology, but I'm not aware of anybody in my life right now who's a Mormon. I might have Mormon friends that I'm not sure about, but I don't think so. Okay. Next question. What large high-stakes group might you promote? Can you list one that is not nefarious? Any church, the military, elite high-stakes sports teams? I can't see any group passing your test. Huh. That's interesting questions. I'm really glad you showed up here today, ROE. I don't know what you mean by high-stakes group. There's no church that I would particularly promote because I don't see religion of any kind that I've run across so far as super true or worth promoting. I believe I express, degrees of tolerance and understanding and acceptance of other churches and religions. I've said so many times here. I'm not anti-religion because you might as well be anti-food. I mean, it's just not. Why take that position? Churches aren't going anywhere, and neither is religion, any more than militaries are, for that matter. So I don't think of those things as cults as such, right? The military or religion, people say religion's a cult. It's a little, unfortunately, it's a lot more complicated than that. Elite high stakes sports teams. I don't know. I'm not really into sports, so I don't really have a lot to say about that. The only label, let me say this maybe in response to this. I don't know if it answers the question, but the only label that I have ever adopted for myself, and with some degree of pride or some degree of this is a label that really works for me, is humanist. So I guess humanism is a group that I would support or promote because I believe in its principles as a foundational sort of set of ideas I can agree with, and a culture that has values I can agree with, and have promoted on this channel, right? But you don't see me pounding the street looking for humanist groups to sponsor my show, but I believe I'm a humanist, and I like the label, and I like what it represents. Yeah, I could put it that way. But you're gonna have to clarify what you mean by high stakes group, because I'm really not sure what you mean by that. Paula Pecorini, hey, do you think that in Scientology having high morals, oh my God, we're almost up on 2 o'clock. I'm gonna have to wrap up here. Do you think that in Scientology having high morals education goes against you? I mean, you develop such a sense of guilt that you are more subject to entrapment. It may seem a contradiction. It's not the moral education that goes against you. I'm gonna be kind of literal in answering your question, Paula. Maybe you didn't mean it this way. I'm not sure, but there's nothing wrong with having moral education or moral awareness or moral intelligence, but it's the degree with which it is applied and the extremity of punishment and discipline demanded where things become unhealthy or even destructive or damaging. That's where morals can become a trap, is when it's us versus them, and it's our way is the best way and no other way has any value of any kind, and therefore those other ways, the logic follows, those other ways must be destroyed. We must plow over them with our own morality and system of belief as we pave this highway into the future. We're going to plow right over all these other untruthful, corrupted versions of morality, right? This is the trap. This is where traps come in, is when this language and these ideas enter into it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having high moral standards for yourself or for others, or wanting to see a better world through good behavior, cooperative behavior, community-based behavior. We need to get along, and we need rules to do so, because otherwise our impulses get in our way, right? Okay, so I'll just put it that way, because I want to see if I can power through the last of these and then wrap up. I'm going to go a little over 2 o'clock, but hopefully not by much. Miss Tara Green, is it common for narcissists to be germaphobic? Trump and Miscavige both seem to be. I will not say that it is common for narcissists to be germaphobic. It is not part of the diagnosis, as I understand it. ROE will appreciate this today. I am not a clinician, and I've never pretended to be. So I can't speak from the position of research or studies on this, but germophobia is not a part of the checklist of things that make somebody narcissistic. So I don't think that that would be the case. But it's not surprising that narcissists would become germaphobes. But I think that pathology is different than narcissism. Okay, ROE, how do you know for sure that the ideas and what you practice at Scientology did not make you the great person you are today? You're pretty amazing, and perhaps part of that came from your COS experience. Well, yes. And overcoming the Scientology practices and experience is what made me the great person I am today. I got myself out of Scientology, and I take a great deal of pride in that. Scientology did make me what I am today, and I wouldn't say otherwise. But that doesn't mean that Scientology is a good thing. A concentration camp experience can make somebody a more humane person. That doesn't make concentration camps a good thing. Having a really fucked up boss at a really fucked up job can make you appreciate and strive for and work harder for a better job somewhere else under better conditions. And because that bad job compelled or prompted you to do better or be better, doesn't make that bad job a good thing. There's my logic on that. All right, last one, Miss Tara Green. Where does one person and another begin? And one person and another begin. Which cells or atoms, molecules are inherently you? How much could be removed from you and still be you? Oh my God, really? My last question is this one? Oh, geez. This is a tough one. Let me say this. You are the sum total of your body, everything in it, your social connections, and the social forces around you that shape and modify and change you because you care or are invested in them. Or are part of them for some reason, right? Your job, your family, the clubs you're part of, or the meetups or activities you're part of, the friendships you have. Those are the things that exist around you that are the social forces that are just as much of an influence on you and your behavior as your mind, brain, and body. Hormones and sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system responses, your gut biome, right? This whole thing down here is having just as much, apparently, as much of an effect on your thinking as what's going on up here, right? There's a whole nervous system brain thing going on down here as much as there is here. It's wild learning about that stuff, really wild. So you're all of it. You're all of those things, and all of them contribute to and make you who and what you are. That's my short summation answer of that. Okay, good. Ex-Scion. You don't need a parachute to go skydiving. You need a parachute to go skydiving more than once. I love stuff like that. That was great. Okay, thanks, Ex-Scion. Oh, that is awesome. All right, guys, thank you very much. ROE, thank you very much for coming around. It is so rare that I get challenging questions. I love it. Thank you for coming and asking me those questions today. I just love it. So, folks out there, and of course, all the other people who ask me questions, you're not excluded either. You guys are wonderful and awesome also. So thank you very much for coming around. We had a great show today, and I will see you guys later. Gonna go here because clearly other streams have started and people are leaving. So that's fine. I went over. Bye-bye.